So good morning, Sandrine.
Morning, Lisa.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I wanted to first thank you for inviting me to this very special recording session that we're doing today. For those of you who are listening, Sandrine has come to Journey on Coaching, which is my coaching business, to get coaching around a very beautiful, amazing idea that she has created for a repository of helping people help themselves. And in an effort to help Sandrine be more specific and get more laser focused on her intention for her repository, we are embarking on a new type of coaching session between us where we're going to be recording ideas and thoughts, teachings and aha moments around self-help and spiritual awakening. And so this will be the first of our many recordings, and we're going to get into specifically today about how Sandrine's website came about, how it was born. And so my first question for you, Sandrine, today would be, what was the one moment that you discovered that having the Spiritual Digging website was an absolute must?
Good question. I think I decided to build the site when I realized that I had more to say about self-growth than I had to say about meditation. Just as a reminder, I built another site, Everyone Can Meditate, because when I started on my own self-growth journey, I used meditation and progressive relaxation. And every time that I mentioned that to people, I would get the weird look, you meditate? And I had to explain to no, I don't sit in a lotus pose, and hum away for hours at a time. There's different ways of doing it, but they're all really helpful, and they've really been helping me integrate all the learnings that I've been going through, all the readings and everything else. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to put up a site together. I work as an IT at a university, so I'm pretty good at finding things and building sites. So I thought, well, let's build a site and let's put all the great meditation resources that I can find out there, or all the ones that I've used, just in an effort to create a meditation repository, where one place find all meditation site.
Mm.
But after doing that for a little while, I realized that, well, I'm not a meditation teacher. I just use it to help me grow. And I realized after a while that I don't have to say, I don't have a whole lot more to say about meditation anymore. I have more to say about self-growth, about the resources that I used, and my own personal, aha moment, and maybe it would be a good idea to share them, because I've gone through tons of resources, and I thought, well, okay, let's try to build a site that's gonna have everything out there, and same thing, in an effort to make it easier for people to find things.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. It actually brings me to another question. As I'm listening to you talk about your journey from meditation to self-growth, what happened? What were you searching for through meditation? What led you to meditation? And then what led you to the spiritual digging?
I started actually with progressive relaxation, body relaxation. After my marriage fell apart, I got to a point where I really needed to do things differently. I had been stuck for many years, and I just didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know how to stop repeating the same patterns. Same patterns, wearing different masks, but it was just was the same thing over and over again. And I just
what were some of those patterns, just so our audience can kind of grab on to just the humanness of what you went through?
Right. Bad relationship was a big one. I've always been attracted to, the wrong, and I'm not saying the wrong type of people, but, to people who had addiction issues or people that were self-destructive and people that would that I would try to help wholeheartedly, and at the same time I would end up resenting them for all the help that I was providing, and it was always that type of circle. And at the same time, because I immigrated to Canada 20 years ago now, it took me quite a while to get over the poverty cycle too. We were really poor for about 10 years, and that took a lot of conscious effort to not repeat the same, the same pattern. When it's just a cycle of poverty that was really, really difficult to break. I wasn't making much money, but in a way I felt entitled to, go for a drink or have a smoke. So these things that it took me a really long time to realize that, yes, I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but the choices that I was, making on the side were also making it worse in a way. So these are all the patterns that I've repeated, and there's more. I mean, there's a lot more, but these are just like some of the, the biggest one. But there was a lot of things, a lot of self-esteem issue, trying to find myself in others, trying to help out others to feel good about myself. There was a lot of that, and this went on for 40 years of my life. Like it always, I can't remember a time where I didn't feel that way, where I felt, like I belonged, or like I was good enough, or I've always felt conflicted, always like I had to, try too hard, and so it took me a really long time to realize and understand why I was attracting these people in my life. And I mean, they were a blessing in disguise. They really were. It took me, 40 years to get it. But I mean, to go back to meditation, when I started taking care of myself, I decided to take care of myself. I decided that's it. Now is the time. I was 40 at the time, and I thought, that's it. You're 40 years old. Get it together. Figure it out. How do I start? And I had no idea, but the only thing that I knew for sure, I couldn't sleep. I was stressed, and I just couldn't sleep. So I thought, okay, fine. Being an IT, I Googled it, and I found someone who said online, hey, try progressive body relaxation. It works really well. So I thought, okay, fine. I downloaded the MP3, and I started using the progressive relaxation every night, and I would fall asleep through it pretty much right away, and wake up the next day feeling nice, refreshed, if somewhat guilty because I had fallen asleep through it. I was pretty self-critical. But after a little while, I started to realize that the relaxation, the body relaxation, plus the added sleep, was starting to get me into a frame of mind that was different. I started to shift. I started to become aware of some of the patterns that I was repeating, like the way I talked to my children. If I snapped at someone, or if I was reactive to some circumstances, I still didn't know what to do about it, and I still didn't have any idea who I was really. I didn't know, core values, strengths. That's when I joined the program that you and I met on too.
Yes, we were classmates through our mentor coach.
Right.
That's right.
And that's, that was one of the big steps. That's one of the programs that I found online after asking for guidance. That was the next step for me. There's one night where I was just completely, just desperate to get some kind of help, and because all my family is in Europe, and it was just me and my children in Winnipeg, I felt really isolated, and I felt really lonely, and I just didn't know what to do. And kind of in desperation, I asked for help right before I went to sleep, and I asked for any kind of help, just show me how to get out of this situation and how to get better. And the next day, I came across Bendine advertisement for the 1 hour seminar, free seminar that he was giving. So I thought, okay, and I listened to that, and then I decided to register for the first course, and that was really helpful to me because it helped me narrow down, or not even narrow down, just figure out core values and strengths, and that was enough of a push to guide me for the original, just to guide my course, just stick to the values and that kind of intention. I mean, from that moment on, my intention was still, was set on this, figuring out exactly who I was, becoming my best self, and following through. These were the first steps, and meditation became a part of that ritual, and a part of that practice, just because it was, at first it really was just because it was helping me sleep. And after a little while, the progressive relaxation didn't do it for me anymore. So I started digging again and trying to find, something that would best fit the growth stage that I was at that time. Right. And every time I asked,
I love that word, by the way, just so you know. I absolutely love and can really deeply relate to the idea of spiritual digging.
I really think that's what it is. That's, to me, it's exactly how it come across. I spent the first 2 years digging for the truth, trying to understand, how I got there, who I was first, and then how I got there, how I got to be who I was. That was the next step in the growth process. And then, how I could perceive and review maybe the past events in a different light, understand them better so that I could step away from them and maybe move forward. So it's been a process, but it's been, meditation has been heavily involved, and reading, like tons of reading and tons of seminars and online courses, and that's been really helpful to put it all together, really.
And I'm hearing, there's such peace in your voice when you speak of this. One of the things you mentioned was how lonely you were at the very beginning, coming from Europe, moving to Canada, going through the divorce, having the children with you, being a young mother, without that familial support. And yet the process you went through was very individualized, and it was very singular. It was only you. How has that helped you? Where, on the one hand, you're very lonely, and yet on the other hand, you're wanting to make this great change in your life, and you know that it has to start with you alone. So how has that experience from feeling lonely to being yourself in this self-discovery, how has that helped you?
That's another big question.
I don't hear that you're lonely. I think this is the crux of what I'm trying to get at. You felt lonely. You know what it feels like, but you knew that this journey had to start with you alone. And yet you don't sound lonely. You sound so overflowing and full.
It's been a long time coming. It's been, I think the first 3 years were difficult because I felt isolated. Even in my growth, I felt isolated because, I don't know, I think when you go on this type of journey, it's kind of hard to not doing it on your own in a certain way because you're the only person who really know what you need and what you're going through. But I think I think that's when, because I was using meditation, and because I was starting to introduce just quiet, deep quiet and calm into my life on a daily basis, and adding to that teachings, whether they were spiritual teachings, and I've read books from many different traditions, because what drew me was the truth that there's a bigger connection somewhere. I don't know how to say that. I think because I felt so isolated, but at the same time I knew that this was just a type of illusion. I thought there's something. There's the meditation just let me glimpse a few times that I wasn't alone. I felt supported. And sometimes it wasn't enough. I mean, sometimes, I remember vividly, thinking, that's great, thanks for your support, but can I have someone here with me hugging me? That'd be better. And, being kind of bitter about it, because, I couldn't materialize for myself, the Prince Charming that I needed. But at the same time, I knew, and because I knew because of the way I felt, but also because of the books that I was drawn to. I think the fact that I was asking for guidance at every step of the way, and I still do. I finish a book, and I ask what's next. How do I approach this now? And I always get the guidance I need. I ask before I go to bed, or now it's not as, I don't have to do that anymore. I can just pause, for a while and just ask for guidance, and I get it. I get it right away, whether it's just do this, or, I come across an interview that's super interesting, and, or the next, amazing person that's showing me things from a different angle, and that's giving me the next few tidbits that I need to, for the next aha moment, or for the next growth stage. But I think the whole loneliness issue started to fade with the more spiritual practice I started to dive into. The more I started to be grateful for these little moments of peace and for the guidance, the less lonely I felt. I felt alone once in a while, but I didn't feel lonely anymore. And now, nowadays, I just don't feel lonely anymore. I feel full all the time. I feel connected. I've been through. I've followed some teachings and some people that really had the big spiritual moments. And I got some teeny ones. I got the I got a few teeny experiences where I felt connected and I knew it was there. But these were moments. They were not hours. They were not weeks. Some people that can that can and that did get lost in these blissful moments for extended period of time. I had glimpse of those, but I know different now. I just know better. I know that it's there, that it's available, and I know that it's supporting me. And I have plenty of examples in my life that suggest that there was always something that was there to make sure that it wasn't a complete disaster. And I've had a lot of a lot of anecdotes about things that happened in my life where things were, like they said in the books, when things were really bleak all of a sudden. And that did happen to me a few times where, I thought, oh, that's it, like we're screwed. And then last minute something would shut up and I thought, oh my God, it's just saved the day. And it happened over and over in the last 20 years. So, there is, I've always felt like there was something, looking out for me. But I think now, in the past 5 years, I've been making a consistent and I'm trying really hard to connect on purpose. Now part of my practice is to nurture that connection, not just to, be grateful when something happens, but to be grateful all the time and nurture that deeper connection. And because I nurture this deeper connection, it feels like it drives what I do now. It kind of pulls me in the direction that I need to go. I don't struggle to make decisions as much. Does it answer your question, or I'm just rambling?
No, that I absolutely think that was a beautiful answer. Absolutely beautiful. So in taking the word connection, because that's, to me, I'm feeling like that is where your core is right now. What are your intentions with spiritualdigging.com?
I think the next step now is to connect to people. Because the first step for me had to be about personal growth. I had to figure out who I was. I had to figure out, my needs, where I was, not where I was going, but my needs, how to stick up for myself. These were things that I really had to do because I didn't have the support and what I needed to develop that as a kid. That's something that was just missing in my life. I just didn't know. I felt like a loose cannon. I'm just, just something like floating grass. I had no sense of self, but not in a nice way, just no sense of self, and that was really eating me up. So, but I've always known also that because of all the experience that I've gone through, and because of all, the relationship and all the people that I've met in my life, I know that my biggest teachings and everybody's biggest teaching are through relationship, through people.
Right.
And I'm at the point in my life where I'm being pulled towards creating and nurturing deeper connection, or just connections, period, with people. And I think I do that at work, but I think that's one aspect that the website can address a little bit more. I mean, to be fair, if you're looking at my life, I have isolated myself on purpose. I moved to Canada with my daughter by myself. I left everyone behind in France for a reason. I needed to escape to grow. That was just the bottom line. I needed to leave a painful past behind in order to find myself and move out. That was the intention. It took me 10 years to get out of poverty before I could even start the work. But that was the intent all along. I needed to step away from the pressure, from the past. I just had to move to be able to move on. But it comes a time where, every decision has its consequences, right? And now I'm in a point where I can realize that, yes, I've created, peace and distance for myself, but my decisions also created isolation.
That's
and geographical isolation. But now that I'm at the point where, I feel the need to contact, to connect with people and to help other people, or at least to share my story in the hope that, it's going to maybe inspire, other people to realize that, hey, if she did it, I can do it.
Right.
So now I have to make the conscious effort in the other direction, towards connection. So that's the biggest part of the reason why Spiritual Digging, the website, was put together, is to put together all the resources that I've used, because I don't believe one person can teach you everything that there is to know to reach enlightenment or peace of mind. Or I think it takes lots of teachers, lots of resources. And I strongly believe in repositories, like a library. I believe that, you should have a place where you can find quality stuff that you need to grow in one place. I don't think you should be wasting, hours and hours of your time to find relevant things. So that's where I've been able to use some of my IT training and put it towards my spiritual aspiration kind of idea.
That's amazing. I love it. And so if you could bring us up to the minute, what are you working on right this second to be adding to spiritualdigging.com?
Right now there's a couple of articles that I'm writing and that I have to, edit before I put it on. I've been regularly, every time I find, because I'm still reading, tons of books and attending seminars and listening to audios and videos. That's something that I actually love doing, because part of the things that have helped me grow, but is to understand how everything fits together. I love the idea that science has an explanation for one thing that kind of crisscrosses the way spiritual teaching explains it, and that, yes, the philosopher were also right, and some of the historical figure had it right. I just love how it all meshed together, how it all kind of, explains, or just explains one truth, but in many different aspects. And
right.
I love that.
You bring to my mind puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
I imagine them scattered out on a table, and somehow they don't look like they all connect. But then they start to connect, and this beautiful picture comes to fruition.
And I love that. I absolutely love that. That's something that I think is fascinating. And the more I study it, the more I meditate on it, the more I realize that, these are not just concepts. A lot of them are actually, they fit together so perfectly that they help me, in a way they've helped me make sense of my past, of my experiences, and how these experiences shaped me. And because I could make sense of it, and all of a sudden it wasn't just me, I wasn't just, the victim of my circumstances, it was just, it's the way your brain grows, and it's the way, it was just, there was an explanation for it. There was, it made sense. I think that the whole making sense of it was really important to me. And then the other side of that is the new knowledge. I love having, when you have some people who just explain things in a way that you've never thought about. And I thought, wow, cool.
Yeah.
And it just gives me new ammunition, and it gives me a new way to look at things. And it's really helpful in everyday life, really, because it's harder and harder for me to take things personally, because once you have a whole bunch of perspective thrown your way and you start to see them all as valid and interesting, then all of a sudden, everybody's experience is also valid and interesting. It's, the judgment starts to, fall away. And so to answer your question without rambling again, every time that I come across a book that I read, that I study, that I love, I add it to the list of books. Every time I watch a video that I really love, that's been really helpful, I add it to the list of YouTube videos I have there. So I keep on populating the site every time I come across quality information. And it's not necessarily that it has to work for me, but it's just, I think I'm at the point, because I've read so many things and because I've had so many aha moments, that and I've read a lot of really bad stuff too. So you come to a point where you can read a book or listen to a presentation and see or hear or feel when the person is genuine, when they know, when they're talking from experience, as opposed to people who talk just from empirical evidence or from, education alone. So
just to spew information out.
It's just a different. For me, for any information to be valuable to my own learning, it has to come from experience. That's the only kind of information that nurtures me. It has to come from experience. So that's the kind of information that you can find on the site. Anything that feels real to me, that feels, genuine to me, is on the site.
And so what would you leave the audience with today? What's the latest book that you've read, or an article that you've written that would be relevant to this moment?
Well, there's a few. There's one revelation that I had that was I mean, and it's personal and it's kind of, a bit religious too, so it's not going to apply to everyone, and I get that. But it was a big one to me because I was raised in France. I was, pretty much born and raised Roman Catholic because that's the way it is in Europe anyway. Well, in France anyway,
Mm-hmm.
But I never felt close to the Catholic Church. I felt a bit resentful too in some ways, and I never felt close to the teaching. They never spoke to me. They felt really edited, like someone that decided what to put in it, and just to kind of control the people. That's how it always felt to me. And I mean, I didn't know anything about it, but I always felt like, when I was a little kid in church, listening to some of they didn't feel like teaching. They felt like preaching, and I mean, that's what they are. But they felt always kind of, stop telling me what to do. I need nourishment. I don't need, rules. So anyway, I've started reading the Nag Hammadi scriptures, and they are the Dead Sea Scrolls, pretty much. And some of them have been revelations because they are closer to what the original words of Christ would have been. And to me, I read in the first few pages, I thought, oh, finally. Because in my mind, I thought, how can it be, enlightened and give the kind of teachings that are in the Bible? Some of them just felt so weird to me, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess because I had read, I'd read the Gita and some of the Buddhist teachings, and I don't know, to me it feels like every enlightened being in history has the same kind of teaching. It's phrased a bit differently, it's tainted by their own culture, their own history, but the nature of the teaching is the same. The underlying nature of all the teaching is the same. So for me to read that book and to be able to finally read the same teaching, I thought, oh, that's great. I felt kind of relieved. I think I still had a chip on my shoulder, about my own education, religious education in Europe, and that was kind of a weight lifted off my shoulders. And there's another one that I just finished that I absolutely love, and it's completely different. It's called Returning to the Lakota Way by Joseph M. Marshall, and it's a fabulous little book. It's they're Lakota, so Native Indian teachings that are just beautiful. A lot of them are stories because a lot of Native population, and I'm not politically correct, so please, don't get offended, but they have a really strong storytelling background. So a lot of his teaching are through storytelling, but all the stories are beautiful. They're all meaningful, and then some of the teachings that he has, on the side, are also deep. And again, a lot of these teachings are really close to, to other teachings that I've studied before, like Tao. It's really close also to Taoism, and so it's fascinating to me to see that all the great teachings of the world say the same thing. And to me, it's really, it points to a one, whatever you want to call it, or one divine connecting energy that, that's there all the time, that kind of pulls everything together, and that has the same teachings for everyone if you're just willing to open your heart to it. So these are the two latest books that are going to end up on the site, and there's a couple of really, really great teachers that I found on site online too that I'm going to add as well.
That's fantastic. I think what you're leaving me with is this sense of love. You really, truly, literally are expressing, as you know, in coaching, one of your top 5 character strengths, which is to love and be loved. And everything that I am walking away with from what you've been saying is centered around love. And you really are using that inclusion of learning from every different angle of the world, how to interpret love for yourself and then to give it back out through your repository to whoever is ready to embrace the information and the love.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm really glad it's coming across that way, because that's really how I feel about it. I feel like I'm driven by a need to experience and share love. That's really how it feels. I
completely feel that, and I thank you so much for sharing this with me and with our listeners. If anybody is interested in getting in touch with you personally, whether to write to you or talk to you by phone, how can they reach you?
I think the easiest way is to go to the site. It's www.spiritualdigging.com. There's contact information on the page, so you can just email me straight from there, or leave a comment on one of the articles if you feel that you have to do that. Or
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So I thank you for this amazing time together. I am honored to be part of these coaching sessions with you. I find myself inspired and educated after every time we meet. And I love this new format. So, what I know about you most of all, Sandrine, is that your heart is in the right place, even when you feel like it's buried somewhere. It's there, and it comes through loud and clear.
Thank you very much.
If anyone... Yeah, go ahead.
I really, really appreciate the coaching sessions that we're having together. It's been really helpful to help me verbalize some of the things that I have in my head that I never even thought of. A lot of the time I have, some of my aha moments with you on the phone when I just, when you ask me questions, and I thought, I never thought about it that way. Or later that week, I'm thinking, wow, I never thought. Yeah, okay, well, maybe I should do it that way. And so your coaching is really, it's been really helpful to me. It's been very, instrumental in helping me develop the site and helping me find my purpose faster. Find just I don't know, get a better laser focus. And that's definitely something that you've been huge help with that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's fantastic. I love the concept of it takes a village to raise a child, and we all have children inside of us. And as we get older, instead of it becoming this huge life that we have sitting in front of us, it becomes life moments that we need to break down into and really make important. And I think that the work we're doing together really emphasizes the life moments to the point where you're able to see connections and you're able to see yourself more clearly, and so then you're able to give more clearly.
I agree, for sure.
So thank you very much for this time together. I can't wait till our next session. If anyone is interested in coaching with me, my name is Lisa. It's journeyoncoaching.com. And you can reach me at lisa@journeyoncoaching.com. And I look forward to speaking with you again, Sandrine.
All right, Lisa. Well, I'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.